Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Not because you are weak, not because you have nothing to say, not because you are trying to punish someone, but because you finally understand that you have said enough, given enough, explained enough, and chased enough. There comes a moment when continuing to reach for someone does not bring them closer. It only takes you further away from yourself, and perhaps that is the moment when you need to step back. Be silent. Stop explaining. Stop proving. Stop asking. Stop wondering what you can do to make someone recognize your value. Because sometimes people do not understand what they have while your presence is constantly available. Sometimes they only begin to notice the shape of your absence after you stop filling the space. But understand this carefully. The purpose of stepping back is not to make them panic. The purpose is to find yourself again. If they realize your worth, that is their realization. If they miss you, that is their experience. If they return, that is their decision. But your healing cannot depend upon any of those outcomes. Because if you step back only to watch them chase you, then you have not truly stepped back. You are still watching, still waiting, still hoping, still chasing psychologically. True distance begins when you stop needing a reaction. And that is where your power begins. There is a profound psychological truth hidden inside silence. When you are constantly present, people can become accustomed to your presence. Your messages become normal. Your calls become normal. Your encouragement becomes normal. Your attention becomes normal. Your forgiveness becomes normal. Your availability becomes normal. And what becomes normal is often no longer consciously appreciated. This does not necessarily mean the other person is cruel. Human beings adapt. We adapt to sounds. We adapt to routines. We adapt to environments. And sometimes we adapt to people. Someone can become so familiar with your kindness that they stop noticing how much kindness they are receiving. Someone can become so accustomed to your patience that they stop appreciating how patient you have been. Someone can become so comfortable with your attention that they forget your attention was a gift. But when you step back, the pattern changes. And the mind notices changes. The silence becomes noticeable. The absence becomes noticeable. The empty space becomes noticeable. And perhaps for the first time, they ask themselves, where did that person go? But ladies and gentlemen, you must not make the mistake of turning this psychological truth into a manipulation strategy. Do not disappear simply to create anxiety. Do not ignore someone because you want revenge. Do not post things online hoping they will become jealous. Do not pretend you are happy just to make them feel like they lost something. Do not manufacture mystery, because manipulation still keeps you emotionally attached. You may not be speaking to them, but you are still organizing your life around their reaction. That is not freedom. Freedom is when you stop asking, what will they think if I walk away? And start asking, what happens to me if I keep staying? That question can change everything, because sometimes staying costs more than leaving. Sometimes continuing to chase costs your confidence. It costs your peace. It costs your dignity. It costs your concentration. It costs your ability to enjoy the present. You wake up and check your phone. You go to sleep thinking about them. You analyze their last message. You wonder why their tone changed. You reread old conversations. You imagine what they are doing. You ask friends what they think. You search for signs. You interpret every small action, and slowly, without realizing it, another person becomes the center of your psychological world. That is when you need to step back, not to make them notice you, but because you need to notice yourself. You need to remember who you were before their attention became your emotional currency. You need to remember your goals, your dreams, your friendships, your talents, your health, your purpose, your future. because you were a complete human being before you met them, and you will remain one if they leave. This is one of the deepest lessons in psychological maturity. Another person's inability to recognize your value does not make you less valuable. Read that again. Someone can misunderstand you. Someone can underestimate you. Someone can reject you. Someone can leave you. Someone can choose another person. Someone can stop loving you. And none of those things can reduce your inherent human worth. They can hurt you. They can disappoint you. They can teach you. They can change you. But they do not define you. Yet many people unknowingly surrender their self-worth to another person's behavior. They think, if they want me, I must be valuable. If they don't text me, I must not matter. If they choose someone else, maybe I'm not enough. If they come back, then I will know I mattered. But this creates a psychological prison. Because now, your emotional state depends upon another person's decisions. If they respond, you feel good. If they don't, you feel worthless. If they come closer, you feel secure. If they pull away, you panic. That is not emotional freedom. That is emotional dependence. And stepping back gives you the opportunity to reclaim your center. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a difference between being alone and abandoning yourself. Being alone can be peaceful. Abandoning yourself is painful. You abandon yourself when you tolerate behavior that violates your values simply because you are afraid someone might leave. You abandon yourself when you repeatedly accept inconsistency because you hope it will eventually become consistency. You abandon yourself when you keep explaining basic needs to someone who has already shown you they are not interested in meeting them. You abandon yourself when you shrink your personality to keep someone comfortable. You abandon yourself when you become less of yourself just to remain desirable. And eventually your soul becomes exhausted. This is why stepping back can be an act of self-respect. You are saying, I care about you, but I also care about myself. You are saying, I will not force a connection that requires me to chase. You are saying, if you want to meet me, you know where I stand. And then you stop. No dramatic announcement, no angry speech, no final attempt to convince them, just a quiet withdrawal of energy. And sometimes that silence tells you everything you need to know. Because when you stop carrying the entire relationship, you can finally see whether the other person was carrying anything at all. This is the fourth important realization. Distance reveals reciprocity. When you are always initiating, you cannot accurately measure the other person's desire. You are constantly creating opportunities for connection. You are constantly making the relationship move. But when you step back, you stop pushing. And now you can observe. Do they reach out? Do they ask about you? Do they try to repair the distance? Do they notice your absence? Do they make an effort? Or does nothing happen? And both answers contain information. If they reach toward you sincerely, you have learned something. If they do nothing, you have also learned something. And information is powerful, because uncertainty can keep you trapped for months. You may think, maybe they care. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they don't know how to express themselves. Maybe they will change. Maybe they need more time. Maybe. But eventually behavior has to become more important than imagination. You cannot build a relationship on potential alone. You build it on patterns. Words matter, but patterns matter more. Promises matter, but consistency matters more. Feelings matter, but behavior reveals how those feelings are being translated into reality. This is why stepping back can be so revealing. You stop filling in the gaps with your imagination. You allow reality to speak. And reality does not always say what you hoped. Sometimes stepping back reveals that someone truly misses you. Sometimes it reveals that they had become dependent upon your attention. Sometimes it reveals that they genuinely care, but were taking you for granted. And sometimes it reveals something painful, They were never going to give you what you needed. That can hurt. But painful truth is often healthier than comforting illusion, because once you know the truth, you can make a decision. Before that, you are trapped in uncertainty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where Jungian psychology offers a profound perspective. Human beings often project unconscious expectations onto other people. We don't just see the person in front of us. Sometimes we see what we hope they could become. We see our fantasy. We see our unmet needs. We see our ideal relationship. We see the possibility of finally being chosen. And then we confuse that psychological image with reality. You may not actually be attached to the person. You may be attached to the version of them you created in your mind. You may be attached to the future you imagined. You may be attached to the feeling you believed they would eventually give you. And when you step back, something extraordinary can happen. The fantasy becomes quieter. Reality becomes clearer. You begin seeing the person as they are. Not as you wish they were, not as they promised they would become, not as you imagined they could be, but as they consistently behave. That is a painful kind of clarity, but it is also freedom, because you cannot make a healthy decision about someone you refuse to see clearly. Sometimes love requires opening your heart, but wisdom requires opening your eyes. And there is another thing that can happen when you step back. They may begin to experience curiosity. Why? Because your behavior has changed. You were predictable. Now you are not. You were always there. Now you are not. You always responded. Now you are living your life. They may wonder, what changed? Why are they suddenly quiet? Did I do something? Have they moved on? Are they seeing someone else? Did they finally stop caring? That curiosity can be powerful. But don't become addicted to it. Do not sit around imagining their thoughts, because then you are still mentally chasing. The greatest irony is that some people physically walk away while mentally remaining in the same relationship. They don't call, but they check social media. They don't text, but they reread messages. They don't ask, but they ask mutual friends. They don't reach out, but they post things hoping the other person notices. That is not detachment. That is hidden pursuit. Real detachment is when you stop needing to know what they think. You become more interested in what you think. You stop asking, do they miss me? And start asking, do I miss who I was before I became obsessed with being chosen? That is a deeper question. Perhaps you don't miss the person. Perhaps you miss the validation. Perhaps you miss the fantasy. Perhaps you miss the routine. Perhaps you miss the version of yourself who believed this relationship would finally make everything right. But another person cannot complete a psychological wound that you refuse to examine yourself. And that brings us to one of the greatest transformations that can happen when you step back. You begin building yourself again. You start waking up earlier. You start exercising. You start reading. You start working. You start creating. You reconnect with people. You rediscover interests. You improve your appearance, not for them, but for yourself. You take care of your body. You protect your sleep. You become more disciplined. You begin thinking about the future, and gradually, your attention moves. It moves from them to you, from their behavior to your goals, from their absence to your presence, from their approval to your self-respect. And something changes. You become less desperate. Not because you stopped caring, but because you discovered that your life is bigger than the relationship. This is where your silence becomes powerful. Not because they hear it, because you hear yourself again. You begin hearing your own thoughts, your own needs, your own boundaries, your own desires, your own intuition. And perhaps you realize that you have been ignoring yourself for a long time. Maybe you knew they were inconsistent. Maybe you knew they were not giving enough. Maybe you knew you were constantly anxious. But you kept telling yourself, just give it more time. Be more patient. Try harder. Maybe they will change. But sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is stop trying to force a result. Step back. Let life answer. And if they care, they will have an opportunity to demonstrate it. If they don't, you have an opportunity to heal. Either way, you move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, never underestimate the power of becoming unavailable to what destroys your peace. Not unavailable to love, unavailable to disrespect, unavailable to manipulation, unavailable to inconsistency, unavailable to emotional chaos, unavailable to one-sided effort, unavailable to relationships where you have to constantly prove that you deserve basic consideration. Your standards should not be walls designed to keep everyone out. They should be doors that only open for people who know how to enter with respect. And this is where self-respect becomes more powerful than revenge. Revenge says, I want you to hurt because you hurt me. Self-respect says, I will not continue participating in what hurts me. Revenge remains connected to the person. Self-respect releases them. Revenge watches their reaction. Self-respect watches your transformation. Revenge asks, did they regret it? Self-respect asks, did I learn from it? Revenge wants them to lose. Self-respect wants you to grow. There is an enormous difference. And if one day they realize your worth, let that be their experience. You don't need to orchestrate it. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to show them what they lost. Your life is not a presentation designed for their approval. Live well because you are alive. Grow because you want to grow. Become stronger because you want strength. Become wiser because you want wisdom. Become peaceful because you deserve peace. If they notice, fine. If they don't, continue. Because the moment your happiness depends on them noticing your transformation, you have given them control again. Don't do that. Your transformation belongs to you. Your healing belongs to you. Your future belongs to you. Your silence belongs to you. Your energy belongs to you. And your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. Give it carefully. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your mind. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your time. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your emotional energy. And this doesn't make you selfish. It makes you conscious. A psychologically mature person learns that boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about controlling their own participation. You cannot force someone to respect you, but you can decide what you will do when they don't. You cannot force someone to communicate, but you can decide whether you will continue waiting. You cannot force someone to love you, but you can decide whether you will continue begging for affection. You cannot force someone to value you, but you can decide whether you will continue offering yourself where you are repeatedly undervalued. That is freedom. And sometimes, Stepping back is the first time you stop trying to control an outcome you were never able to control. You stop trying to control whether they return. You stop trying to control whether they regret. You stop trying to control whether they miss you. You stop trying to control whether they understand, and you begin controlling what you actually can. Your choices, your boundaries, your behavior, your attention, your future, your response. That is where psychological power lives, not in controlling another person's emotions, in governing your own. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps you have been waiting for someone to realize your worth. Maybe you have thought, once they understand how much I did for them, they'll appreciate me. Once they see how much I've changed, they'll regret leaving. Once they see me happy, they'll come back. But what if you stopped waiting for that moment? What if you decided that you don't need them to realize? What if you realize it yourself? What if you finally say, I know what I bring. I know the kind of love I can give. I know the kind of person I am. I know what I deserve. And I no longer need someone else to confirm it. That is the moment you become difficult to control, because people can manipulate your need for validation, but they cannot easily manipulate someone who has stopped needing validation from them. They can threaten to leave, and you may be sad, but you don't collapse. They can withdraw attention, and you may notice, but you don't beg. They can reject you, and it may hurt, but you don't abandon yourself. That is emotional strength, not the absence of pain, the ability to experience pain without allowing it to destroy your identity. And perhaps that is the real meaning of stepping back. It isn't about becoming cold. It isn't about becoming heartless. It isn't about pretending you don't care. It is about caring without losing yourself. You can love someone and still walk away. You can miss someone and still choose yourself. You can forgive someone and still maintain distance. You can wish someone well without reopening the door. You can remember beautiful moments without returning to an unhealthy pattern. This is maturity, because sometimes love says, come closer. And sometimes wisdom says, step back. You need both. You need the heart to love, and the mind to recognize when love has become self-destruction. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid of silence. Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. When you are used to constant communication, silence feels like emptiness. But stay there. Sit with it. Let yourself feel what comes up. The loneliness, the anxiety, the urge to reach out, the temptation to check, the desire for reassurance. Don't immediately run from those feelings. Observe them. Ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Maybe it is fear of abandonment. Maybe it is fear of rejection. Maybe it is loneliness. Maybe it is grief. Maybe it is simply habit. Because not every urge needs to become an action. You can feel the urge to text someone and choose not to. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can feel uncertain and still maintain your boundary. That is emotional discipline. And every time you resist the impulse to chase, you strengthen your ability to choose rather than react. You become less impulsive, more conscious, more grounded, more secure. And one day silence won't feel like punishment. It will feel like peace. You will enjoy your own company. You will no longer fear empty spaces. You will understand that solitude is not necessarily loneliness. Sometimes solitude is where you meet yourself again. And when you become comfortable with yourself, you stop accepting relationships simply because they prevent you from being alone. You start choosing relationships because they genuinely add value to your life. That is a major transformation. You stop asking, can I keep them? And start asking, can we build something healthy together? That is a better question. Because relationships are not about possession. They are about participation. Two people choosing each other. Two people communicating. Two people growing. Two people respecting boundaries. Two people making effort. Two people willing to repair what breaks. And if one person is doing all of that while the other watches, eventually the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. So step back. Not dramatically, not angrily, quietly, with dignity. Let them show you what they are willing to do when you stop doing everything. And while you wait, don't sit still. Move. Build. Create. Grow. Heal. Because stepping back from someone should mean stepping forward into your own life. That is the part many people forget. They think distance means waiting. It doesn't. Distance means redirecting. Redirect your attention. Redirect your energy. Redirect your focus. Redirect your love toward your own development. And eventually you may reach a place where their reaction no longer matters. They might contact you. You smile. They might not. You continue. They might apologize. You listen. They might change. You observe. They might not. You move forward. Because your emotional stability is no longer attached to their decisions. That is freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest proof that you have moved on is not that they come back. It is that you no longer need them to. The greatest proof that you know your worth is not that someone recognizes it. It is that you refuse to bargain it away. The greatest proof of your strength is not that you can make someone chase you. It is that you can walk away from what is not reciprocal without turning bitter. And the greatest proof of healing is not forgetting them. It is remembering them without losing yourself. So step back. Stay silent when silence is healthier than another explanation. Stop chasing where there is no reciprocity. Stop proving what should already be obvious. Stop begging someone to see what you already know. Let your actions speak. Let your absence reveal the truth. Let time expose patterns. And most importantly, let your life become bigger than the person you once centered it around. Maybe they will realize your worth. Maybe they will miss you. Maybe they will regret taking you for granted. Maybe they will return. Maybe they won't. But your mission remains the same. Become someone you are proud to be. Build a life you don't need to escape from. Develop a mind that brings you peace. Protect your emotional energy. Love deeply, but love wisely. Give generously, but don't give yourself away. Be compassionate, but maintain boundaries. Be open, but remain discerning. And when someone walks away, don't immediately chase them into the distance. Pause. Breathe. Look at yourself. Ask what this moment is trying to teach you. Perhaps it is teaching you that your worth was never dependent upon their recognition. Perhaps it is teaching you that silence can reveal more than arguments. Perhaps it is teaching you that you cannot force reciprocity. Perhaps it is teaching you that being alone is better than being constantly anxious beside someone. Perhaps it is teaching you that the person you have been desperately trying to keep was never supposed to be kept. And perhaps the greatest lesson is this. You don't have to make someone realize your worth. You only have to stop behaving as though they are the authority on it. Stand tall. Step back. Become quiet. Not because you have lost your voice, but because you have finally learned that your peace does not require constant explanation. And if they look back one day and realize what they lost, let them. If they finally understand your value, let them. If they regret taking you for granted, let them. But don't turn around simply because they finally notice the person you always were. Your worth existed before their recognition. Your beauty existed before their attention. Your potential existed before their approval. Your future existed before they entered your life. And it will continue after they leave. So stop chasing. Stop proving. Stop waiting. Stop wondering. Start living. Start becoming. Start choosing yourself. Because perhaps the person you have been waiting for to recognize your worth is not them. Perhaps it is you. And the moment you finally recognize yourself, you no longer need to stand outside someone's door begging them to see you. You walk away. You breathe. You look toward the horizon. And you realize that the life waiting for you is far greater than the validation you were chasing. That is when silence becomes power. That is when distance becomes clarity. That is when self-respect becomes stronger than attachment. And that is when you finally understand. You were never meant to chase someone into recognizing your worth. You were meant to become so deeply connected to yourself that whether they recognize it or not, you never forget it again.